Good evening, everybody. We are here on September 25th for a meeting of the Clawson Board of Ethics. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And then move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. If we'd all rise.
One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We can move on to roll call.
Commissioner McGinnis,
Here.
Commissioner Feng.
Here.
Commissioner Nishai.
Here.
Commissioner Quinn.
Here.
Commissioner Traxel.
Here.
That is a quorum, sir.
Okay, thank you, August. At this time, we will move on to public comment if there's any.
Andrew Hodges. So on the 4th of July, I was walking around Clawson Center and I was walking up to this vehicle and I saw a banner on the back of it that said City of Clawson. I got real excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, the city's got a vehicle in the parade. Great. I started walking a little bit further and that's when I saw Paula Milan's campaign signs. And then I'm like, oh, and then I walked a little further and I'm like, oh, the mayor and city council banner across the front. And my heart just was like, oh, there's going to be residents who think that she's being backed by the city of Clawson or the city council. And I was like, this can't be right. And then I went home and I looked up the law and yes, she broke a campaign finance law. You're not supposed to use city property with campaign, with her vote for Paula Milan. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to keep it separate. And it was city property. And, you know, I don't think the city would have, you let me do it. If I wanted to use those banners with the city logo, or even now, put it on my car and drive it around the city. It's city property. She broke a law. And then I looked on the Clawson ethics and she broke the ethics ordinance. And that's why I filed it. Because this is why the law is there. I mean, there's going to be residents out there who actually, who think that she's being backed. Then gives her a push up. That's why the law is there. She did break a law. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. So great to be back here again. I would like to say that I'm really grateful that we have residents in our town that want to keep us all on task and to explain what is right and what is not right. I would ask that if someone is going to claim that someone broke a law or any such thing, that they would be able to substantiate it. And but I'm not going to go there today. What I'm going to say is I, on the 4th of July, served as the mayor of this community. I utilized banners that were given to me by Howie Aris. When Howie Aris handed me those banners, he stated, take control of them, they will disappear. Where they came from beyond that, I don't know. I had them in my possession for several years. Those banners were placed on, actually, I was surprised my husband had the same truck for 2 years straight. Isn't that weird, Liz? My husband actually had the same truck 2 years straight. They were placed in the same area 2 years in a row. Prior to that, we had carried those banners as a city council. But when I became mayor, I wanted to pass out trinkets like other mayors have done, the little necklaces and such. So I purchased necklaces. I handed them off to the other council member who chose to walk with me. And the three of us passed out necklaces. The banners were fixed to my husband's truck, my husband's personal vehicle. My husband put my campaign sign, which says Paula Milan, mayor in large print, 4 in small print on there because when we're walking the campaign trail, people are like, who is that? Nobody knows people don't know your elected officials and they would just like to know a name. I will say that the other 2 members that were with me were also going to bring their signs. And then there was a little snafu about one having them, one not having them, and then them both deciding neither would put them there. That's neither here nor there. There was no violation. I did not misappropriate city materials. I did what had been done in the past. I believe it's pretty clear to say that if in my service to the city of Clawson, I'm extremely cautious about what I do and what I don't do. My whole goal is to serve this community well. I do not need an unfair advantage of putting my name on a truck that also has the city of Clawson logo in order to be elected again as this community's mayor. I believe people are smarter than that to know that there is no stamp of support any more than my husband's Nissan car logo also giving me a support from Nissan. So I would just like to say thank you to you for serving in this capacity again. Again, I apologize that I am the subject of your not having a night at home with your families. And I take honor in what I do for this community. I'm very proud of how I serve this community. And I guess I'll just let it go at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Good evening, Matt Binkowski. I'm one of the co-complainants. I wasn't going to speak because frankly, I thought everything I needed to say was in there. City-owned banners were on the same truck in the unit with campaign signs. But then I read Mayor Milan's response, and she wrote, on July 4th, I had not yet begun campaigning. It's absolute nonsense. She put her campaign signs in the truck. Why would she put campaign signs in the truck if she wasn't campaigning? She hired Mickey and Minnie Mouse to go along with her. She handed out trinkets. Those are all things you do when you're campaigning. You cannot honestly believe that she was not campaigning on July 4th. Anyway, that's about all I have to say to that. Thank you for your time and thank you for looking into this matter.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Sure.
I have absolutely no problem with truthful statements, but I do have a problem with just because someone says something that it takes legs and then it pretends it's real. I did not campaign that day. I had submitted my information to run for mayor. Anyone who knows me and people in this room can attest. It took me a while before I decided I was or was not going to actually pursue a term of mayor again. I can honestly tell you on the 4th of July, I was not campaigning. There were no statements, Paula Milan for mayor or any such thing on the necklaces that I purchased. Mr. Binkowski, I offered you one, you declined, yet you wound up with one that one of the other people handed you. So you benefited from my materials as well. Mickey and Minnie Mouse were there as part of the parade. I would like to take credit for bringing them in and hiring them. I hired nobody. I showed up and I acted as the duly elected mayor in a very proud fashion. I stand by that now, and I appreciate me getting credit for other things, but it shows the character. And this is what we should be looking at. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, no, then we will move on to some old business. The first is to approve the minutes of the March 20th, 2023 Board of Ethics meeting, which we have attached to the packet here.
I'll make a motion to approve minutes of the March 20th, 2023 meeting.
Support.
Commissioner Fenton,
Yes.
Commissioner McGinnis.
Yes.
Commissioner Nishai,
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn,
Yes.
Commissioner Traxel.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, now we move on to the minutes of the August 14th, 2023 Board of Ethics meeting.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move to approve the minutes of the August 14th, 2023 Board of Ethics meeting.
Support.
Commissioner McGinnis,
Yes.
Commissioner Nishai,
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn,
Yes.
Commissioner Traxel,
Yes.
Commissioner Fenton.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we're gonna move on to the new business, which is the review of the ethics complaint filed against Paula Milan by Matthew Pinkowski and Andrea Hodges. Thank you, August, for getting us these packets in time, and thank you, Mr. Nushai, for the opinion letter as well. I've had the opportunity to review the complaint that was filed against Mayor Paul Milan by residents Andrea Hodges and Matthew Pinkowski. I've also had the opportunity to listen to public statements as well as read an email that was submitted by a resident and a written statement that was submitted by Mayor Milan. Finally, I reviewed the opinion letter written by the city attorney, Rennis Nushai. And everything is included in the packet for the public to view. So to kind of start with, if you don't mind me talking for just a minute, if that's fine. That's one thing attorneys are good at, is just talking. To start kind of based upon the opinion letter of Mr. Nushai, there's two questions to be analyzed to determine if Mayor Milan violated the Clawson Code of Ethics. The first is whether the fact that the same banners with city insignia were only available to the mayor and no other candidate constituted a violation of the ethics ordinance. And second, whether the use of the city's insignia constituted use of city property for personal benefit or for the benefit of other persons. Now, kind of before I dive into that, first I want to take a minute to kind of address the creation of the Board of Ethics, my understanding of the purpose of the Code of Ethics, and why I volunteer my time to this board. It's my understanding that the city of Clawson found what many across the country have found, and that's that city officials are rampant with ethical issues in local politics. A city as small as Clawson, and while it may have a big heart, is not immune. So the Clawson Code was modified to add an ethics provision. My understanding of the purpose of the Code of Ethics is to try to help curb behaviors that go beyond mere appearances of impropriety. The hope of a Board of Ethics is that we'd receive no complaints. And as a whole, we've been largely unused. We haven't had packets that are really thick or too many meetings. And as much as I like seeing everybody here, it's much nicer to be home. Now, whether that's a product of limited ethical violations or lack of reporting is hard to know. One thing I'd like to address is body's been called a few different things before. One of the things we've been called is a kangaroo court. And that's something I take great offense to. I volunteered because I take ethics very seriously. The dictionary defines a kangaroo court as an unofficial court held by a group of people in order to try to take someone regarded or to find someone regarded, especially without good evidence, is guilty of a crime. And generally, it's the opponents of the accused bringing such action. We're not a court, but we are an official body who takes their tasks very seriously. None of us would be here if that wasn't the case. We also have no stake in the outcome of these matters. We're an official body that has been tasked to determine one thing, and that's whether or not a city code provision regarding ethics has been violated. We were established by council, and our procedures have at least been tacitly approved by council. The members of this board have been appointed by council, and while we serve at the pleasure of council, council does not dictate how we act. Instead, we operate more as an independent body, providing some additional checks and balances upon those who represent the city. We're not convened for the purpose of trying to bring down people in high regard. And a lot of this has been said about politics and as this board not to further political agendas. There's no desire, no actual ability to further a political agenda for operating correctly. We have guidelines, and yes, like a court, we are to apply those guidelines to determine if a violation has occurred. If people are out there using this body to further political agendas, I would say shame on that. Such motives are not the intention of the creation of this board. And no one sitting here wishes to be a tool operated at the hands of someone for personal motives. However, so long as a person has not violated the provisions of the charter, then no political agendas can be furthered. Instead, I would caution anyone who's a member of the city government or employee to constantly choose what is right and to do what they can to avoid improprieties, and then it'll make it easy for any case to be quickly dispelled. We've in the past chastised those who have acted with the appearance of impropriety, even if their actions are not in a violation. However, in those matters, the guidelines set forth by the code were not violated. If people are fearful that this board will somehow further a political agenda, they must first ask themselves, why have they done something that would give fodder to opponents in this city? Now, turning to the case at hand, I want to address everything that's been submitted. First is the opinion by Mr. Nushai. Mr. Nushai issued an opinion letter that recommended limiting the scope of our analysis today in order to avoid treading into the murky waters of what constitutes free speech. And I respectfully limit any analysis that I have made to those two questions and would ask that the board do the same. So therefore, we're not addressing anything that's related to free speech. Then there's the complaint itself that was submitted with its supporting documents and pictures. We're to look at the allegations contained in the complaint itself. It's not our job or duty to seek out violations. It is not our job to reframe or rewrite the complaint to find or to clarify violations as well. The complaint selects 3 alleged violations. One, that the mayor used her position to provide preferential treatment. The mayor used that she used city property for personal gain, and that political activity was done using the city's resources or time. Then I looked at Mayor Paula Milan's statement that she submitted as well. And addressing the use the position to provide preferential treatment, if I can paraphrase, was that if she used her position for preferential treatment, she would have requested a place closer to the front of the parade or even requested a float. For the use of city property for personal gain, that there was no personal gain, that she expended all the funds for the festoons and the like to be in the parade. This was all done for a personal loss, not a gain. And for the political activity, using the city's resources or time, that she participated using signage as all past mayors have done. She further stated the Oakland County did not certify candidates until after July 25th. So there's no need to campaign and she was not yet a candidate for mayor. And finally, that she participates and gives a lot to the community at an expense of personal time and resources, and that she's not done anything in her capacity as mayor for personal gain. Then we have the email from the resident. We received an email from a resident that addresses that the complainants themselves participated in the parade. And however, there's been no violations brought against them. First, just for clarification, I'd like to ask Mr. Nushai, does the code section apply to residents of the city who are not city officials or employees of the city?
No, sir, it doesn't.
Okay. And I wanted to address that because I wanted to kind of make it clear and make sure that my understanding was correct. Because this code is limited to city officials, not individual residents in the city of Clawson. My understanding would be to have the code include resident complaints against non-city official residents would likely result in every neighborhood or neighbor dispute being brought before this board. And I don't think that was, again, the desire or the intention of creating this board. In addition, if there is an actionable complaint, I would encourage residents to file a complaint for us to investigate. But the complainants or their motives are not what's being addressed today. Again, I can only hope that people are using this forum with the right motives. I understand that anybody can have political motives or bias. However, again, this board is not a political board, nor decisions based on whether or not nor are any of our decisions based on whether or not someone likes someone or has a personal relationship with someone. In fact, I would hope that in a city this small, we all have relationships with our neighbors. Now, the crux of this email is similar to one of the first complaints that was brought kind of before us, when those who were defending wanted to launch an attack against the complainant to use that as a defense. And we were quick to dispose of those arguments. And then finally, there were statements made by the public, and all of those statements were in support of the mayor. Now, the applicable law that we're looking at is the Clawson Code of Ethics, and it states in defining a city official or employee as a person elected, appointed, or otherwise serving in any capacity involving the exercise of a public power, trust, or duty. And then we look at preferential treatment. A city official, elected member of any board or employee shall not use his or her official position to unreasonably secure, request, or grant any privileges, exemptions, advantages, contracts, or preferential treatment for himself, herself, or others. The use of city property. A city official, elected member of the board or employee shall not directly or indirectly use any city property for personal gain or for the private benefit of a third party. And finally, for political activity, no city official, elected member of the board or employee shall use any city time or property for his or her own political benefit or for the political benefit of any other person seeking elective office, provided that the foregoing shall not prohibit the use of property or facilities available to the general public on an equal basis for due consideration paid. No political activity shall interfere with the performance of the usual duties of any city official or employee. When I went through this, there were a few facts that I found that were not in dispute. One was that Mayor Paula Milan participated in the July 4th parade. That Mayor Milan used the City of Clawson banner on her personal vehicle. in the parade. Or her husband's personal vehicle, however you wish to categorize it. And then Mayor Milan had signs posted in the vehicle that stated Paula Milan for mayor. Now, facts in dispute is whether or not the city insignia is city property, whether or not the city insignia was available for use to anyone else participating in the parade, and whether or not Mayor Milan personally benefited from using the city insignia in the parade. So the first question that I think we have to look at is the first one kind of posited by Mr. Nushai, which is whether the fact that the same banners with city insignia were only available to the mayor and no other candidates constitute a violation of the ethics ordinance. First, as stated above, a violation of the ethics ordinance can only be brought against the city official. What is not clear is whether or not anyone in the city can use the insignia for their own personal benefit of themselves. Carrying the city insignia, there's no evidence that anyone else sought to use the banners. And there's also no evidence that somebody tried to seek to use the banners and were prohibited by Mayor Milan from using them. And if they're available to the general public, then there's surely no duty on Mayor Milan to make sure everybody has the opportunity to use these banners. The second question is whether the use of the city's insignia constituted use of city property for the personal benefit or for the benefit of other persons. And both of those questions are, I think, what we need to kind of dive into here tonight to kind of decide whether or not a violation had occurred and whether or not one of the three selected boxes for a violation were violated. And so when we look to certain matters in this, we need to look to see whether or not the city insignia is city property. We need to look to see if they were available for others to use. And then we must move on to whether or not the use was for the personal benefit of the mayor. From my just looking at everything, personal benefit or personal gain does not attach a monetary value in the code. Again, unless I'm incorrect in reading that, Mr. Nushai.
No, I don't, there is no attachment of a monetary value.
Therefore, whether or not someone received a financial benefit is not the question. And that would really be the easiest way to find or determine a violation. However, nothing has been alleged that a financial benefit was received. So I think we need to ask ourselves, what is personal gain or benefit? And at this point, I'd like to just kind of stop talking for a minute and kind of open up the forum to the rest of the board to discuss these couple questions.
I'd like to ask the city attorney, it wasn't clear to me in your assessment where you're guiding the board on the definition of political activity.
Well, so to address your question, my hope through my opinion is to limit the inquiry to the best of your abilities. Obviously, as most, if not all of you members of the board will know, obviously there's a tendency anytime you analyze issues such as this or ethics issues to want to look at the larger picture. I think that would be a disservice to this particular issue tonight. And the reason being, there's obviously a lot of rights that we enjoy as citizens in this country. The free speech rights, and that's why I spent as much time as I did, in my opinion, talking about that. Dwelling on those is probably unhelpful because it's above and beyond the scope of this board.
It's not above and beyond the scope of this board when it's in the ordinance.
What is in the ordinance, ma'am?
Political activity is defined as a conflict of interest.
Well, but I think my point is that you need to look at the limited scope of political activity as far as it's related to the ethics ordinance, not above and beyond that.
Okay.
Right. So I guess ask me the question one more time, I suppose.
I didn't see anywhere in your statement where you were giving us any precedent on political activity as it relates to how it's defined in our ordinance.
Well, political activity wouldn't necessarily be defined in our ordinance, though.
It is defined in our ordinance.
Well,
You have that definition here, but in terms of how this equates to matching that definition, I don't see in your.
Yeah, but I think that's the very scope of your inquiry here tonight. I think that's what you will have to decide as a board.
You just told us that we shouldn't be considering that.
What I'm asking you not to do is to dwell above and beyond the simple, the simple, sort of limited confines of that political activity as applies to the ethics. As analyzed by the Code of Ethics. If we go beyond that, we're going into, for example, and here I'll give you the exact reasoning that I had in mind and that I attempted to list to you to this board. There was a portion of the complaint that was filed dealt with campaign finance, right? So that's not, there's the small blurb of dealing with campaign finance requirement in our Code of Ethics. It doesn't apply here though. That particular area of the law applies elsewhere. This board has no authority to deal with that per se. That's the distinction that I'm asking you to draw just for your own sake, not because it makes any difference to me, I suppose, but you'd be dwelling in an area that is above and beyond sort of the board's duty and obligations. So I think my sentiment is that the board should probably limit its inquiry, but that is the answer to your question ultimately has to be given by the members of this body.
So then just one other question in terms of,
Turn on your mic.
yeah, we can't hear you.
Excuse me, sorry. So one other question, I guess, is how we're gonna proceed to vote on this. Are we voting on each of the potential violation areas separately? As we've done in the past?
Yeah, I mean, usually that's what this, I mean, obviously the body will make the determination. The five of you will make the determination. That's what you've done in the past. I would imagine that would make sense.
I just want to confirm, Chair, because you're asking us to limit the scope of our deliberation. So are we going to go through the individual potential areas of violations?
Yes, I believe that's what we should do. And again, the three alleged violations are that the mayor or the allegation that the mayor used her position to provide preferential treatment was one. The second one was that the mayor used city property for personal gain. And then the third one is that the mayor could basically conducted political activity using the resources or time of the city.
So right now we're discussing whether she had any personal gain.
Yeah, I think we can take it in any order in the discussion.
Okay. I mean, I think personal gain is something that could be measured. I know it's not necessarily monetarily, but I don't see that we have any measurement to for sure say that she did have any financial gain from it, or not, I'm sorry, not financial gain, but any personal gain from that. Same with preferential treatment of use of the insignia and the banners. If nobody else sought to use them or asked to use them and was denied, I mean, I could say, okay, sure, then she had preferential treatment because she was the mayor. That didn't take place, so therefore we can't assume then that she had preferential treatment.
Wouldn't preferential treatment be the possession of the banners? Based on holding the position of mayor?
And that was one thing that I don't think we knew or had knowledge of.
Yeah, I guess I didn't know that she had, yeah.
I know, I'm just basing that on Mayor Milan's comments from now.
My understanding, if I may, the use of the banners was for the purpose of announcing the council and the mayor in the 4th of July parade, nothing more. As it had been used, I'm told, in years past. So I'm not quite sure where I would see any personal gain from that. She was just announcing to the public, we are the mayor and the council. And that was it.
I think in why this is going to be so challenging to take these separately is because they are interconnected by nature. Because if whoever determines that the use of the Paula Milan for mayor signs makes this a political activity, then we have to also identify whether personal gain was made through that activity. So I think that there's a level of interconnectedness that we haven't seen so far with the previous complaints. So I take your point that that has been done in the past. There's precedent for the banners. There's precedent for the mayor and the council to be participating in the parade. What I think is challenging that narrative is the use of political signage.
And that political signage was not city property, correct?
No,
The
No.
political signage, no, would not have been city property. That would have been,
And the signage was attached to a truck that was somebody's personal property, a citizen, the husband, I'm told.
yes.
that still makes, it's still political activity. Doesn't matter who owns the property.
I'm playing devil's advocate. You're assuming then that it was the mayor that put that sign on the truck. Is it possible that the husband did that, not knowing he's just supporting his wife?
I think the statements we had was the mayor put that on there, or whether it was her or the husband. I mean, she had knowledge, there was discussion of the other two potentially putting signs on the truck as well. And then deciding not to, so there was at least knowledge before the parade by the mayor that her signs were going to be on the vehicle, while two other signs were not going to be on the vehicle.
From my perspective, my opinion, if the mayor was using this event, the 4th of July, a national holiday, as a means to talk about her candidacy, I think I would have fired her campaign manager because there was nothing else there. She wasn't handing out vote for Paul Milan. She wasn't asking for anybody's vote. She didn't say on the city banner, vote for Paul Milan. That's why I'm a little confused. I think we're mixing apples and oranges.
Yeah, I mean, I think I disagree to the extent that, I guess the question for me is, does having a city banner in this type of thing, is that tantamount to giving the appearance of an endorsement by the city? Or is it not? I mean, that's part of,
Down the same concern.
that's kind of, that's really, I think, to what, in looking at it is having the city banner announcing that this is the city, this is the mayor, and this is the city council. Mayor and city council are coming down the road. And then there's a sign that says, or signs that say Paul Milan for mayor. Right, is that, or could that be seen as the city itself endorsing Mayor Milan in the upcoming election? And then in speaking for personal gain, I think one of the things that's tricky on this, when we're trying to get into what's measurable or not measurable, is I think it's going to be something difficult to measure, because one, the election hasn't happened, and two, it's not like we have a polling of everybody who voted to say I voted based upon seeing the signs in there or not seeing in there. But again, I don't think, you know, it ties to, again, if it's tantamount to an endorsement, does that alone give some kind of personal gain? Or does it not give some kind of personal gain? That's how I look at it. And it could be said the same as if other individuals had their campaign banners on the vehicle as well. It just so happened to be only the mayor's on it.
I agree. I have the same concerns, and I think that if there was a participation as the mayor with the city banners, including the other council members, I think there would be no violation in that. I think if the mayor had used her signage without the city of Clawson signage, there would be no violation in that. But the combination of the two, for me, makes it inextricably political. And therefore, that's where I'm having some concerns about being able to extricate one from the other.
I think it's a rather large leap to assume that because of the the banners that were used on the card, that means that they were endorsing her as the mayor. She is the mayor. It would be different if she wasn't, if she was just a city council member running for mayor, let's say. And they had her name on there with the city council banners. I could understand that even more, but because she is the mayor, it was almost more of just an announcement that this is the mayor, Paula, walking in the, Mayor Paula Millan, don't mean any disrespect, but, and that with the other council members. Would I have preferred the other council members' banners on there as well? Yes. That we're walking with at the time, but I think it's a pretty big leap to say that because the city banners were used, that it's endorsing her as the mayor because her sign was there. I think that's kind of a large leap that we're making that assumption, to make that assumption.
I think if the other council members had banners on there that said their names for council, we would be in the same position
Yes.
now. I
Yeah,
think.
just to
Yes,
clarify that.
before.
I think what we were saying, I think about my understanding is if you had signs that say for whatever and no sign that says Clausen, that's fine.
Mhm.
Or if you had just the sign, the Clausen sign and no
Yeah, I
additional
understand.
banners, then
Yeah.
that would be fine. It's tied into, is that?
Correct, that's what I was trying
Okay,
to say.
all right, just want to make sure I understood.
I mean, I don't know, are we able to include what we heard in public comment in our deliberation?
Yes, I think we get to include whatever we have, so the public statements that are made, we get to use.
So I was a little bit concerned to hear the mayor say that she was at the parade in her role as mayor and had her Paula Millan for mayor sign included. That to me feels again like political activity. If it was, what I thought I understood from previous communication was that she was there on the campaign and used the city of Clausen sign, not meaning to say that there should be a perception of endorsement, but just that was sort of combining those things. But when I heard the mayor say that she was there in her official capacity as mayor, that for me is complicating this more as political activity during, while she was conducting her duties of the office.
So as opposed to just being a citizen walking in the parade, is that what you're saying? I mean, I don't understand how she could not be there as the mayor. She is the mayor. So I understand what you're saying. She's there working as the mayor. Maybe if she wasn't the mayor, she wouldn't be there walking, but it was very identified that the board was, or a board member, 2 board members, whatever, was also there with her in their capacity. Again, I mean, I think it would be, she was not handing out flyers. She was just handing out trinkets to, like, everybody else that was walking in the parade was handing out either candy or trinkets or, whatever. She was doing the same. I don't think everybody else was politicking. I walked in the parade. I wasn't politicking for anything. I was just walking in the parade to have fun and be part of a community. But I'm a pastor's wife for a church here in Clausen, but I wasn't doing it as the role. I mean, I was just doing it, but we were there. So I mean, there's lots of different reasons why you're there, and you could be doing it as multifaceted. She could be there as a citizen and as the mayor. I think I understand what you're saying though, because she was saying that she was there in the role of the mayor, but she was, because that's why the banners were on the thing as well. They were there representing the city of Clausen.
Right, and I think the banners are what's making this troublesome.
Yeah.
Is because the use of the banners was for the purpose of announcing the council and the mayor in the parade. And so if the use of the banner was for the purpose of saying this is the mayor and this is the council, and then I guess whether trinkets were passed out or not for me, and I mean, we can say whether or not it was good campaigning or bad campaigning or whatever else is there. I mean, are we saying that if she would have handed out flyers, then it would have been political activity?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would have indicated more that she was there to be as a politician, politicking, trying to gain votes, have a personal gain.
But but again, at the same point, if that's the case, then what's the difference between handing out a flyer or having a banner or a sign that says, elect me for this?
But it didn't say elect.
Well, it says mayor, it said Milan for mayor. So again, you're right, it doesn't say elect, but I don't think I see any of the signs out that people put in front of their house that say, they usually say somebody for something. I think we all know that that's a sign, and I think the mayor knew that that was her campaign sign. I think it's disingenuous to say that that's not a campaign sign. Or a sign that, and I've seen that sign.
Yeah, no, I
on
agree it's a
people's lawns.
campaign
I mean, as
sign,
I've been driving around the city. Well, if you agree it's a campaign sign,
but I don't necessarily know that it was for, that it provided any personal gain.
you don't know. And I think that's part of the problem that I'm wrestling with.
Yeah.
That we're wrestling with is we don't know because the election hasn't happened, but the toothpaste has come out of the tube.
The
And I
only
think-
issue that I see is with the sentiment of our mayor not handing out trinkets or flyers or whatnot is to see it in the manner of there's no such thing as just breaking the law a little bit. It's either you break it or you don't. And in the same facet, was she campaigning or not? She was. It was very simple. Was she campaigning a lot or not? Was she doing a good job or not? Should her campaign manager be fired or not? That's an entirely different thing. But was she campaigning? Yes, she was. I don't see it on the other one. It says Mayor Milan or Milan for mayor sign right next to our city signs. I don't understand what's the issue though. For her not to do more is not constituting a crime, if you will, if we use the same example I was trying to use. There's no such thing. Either you commit one or you don't. Did she commit the crime of the century? No, she didn't, obviously. Did she violate this ordinance? I think so.
Does she have to know in
Yes,
her own mind that she broke this ordinance?
yes, she does. She's the mayor. She's
Well,
the
what
number
if she
one
didn't,
official.
what if she didn't realize that? Let's just say, argument's sake, they're putting together something to march in a parade with, and they have limited things to do, and they find these banners, which they used. And this sign, I don't know if it's a current sign, it didn't say Paul Milan 2023, it just said.
Yeah.
the Paul
U.S.
Milan.
Congress has solved us of that mystery too. Has said ignorance of the law is no defense of the law. It's the same thing applies here.
And do
She
we,
is the number one person in this town, elected official. She should know. If she doesn't, she should ask. There's an army of people working here. Well, not an army, but there is a lot of people working in this town that she would ask and give her a professional opinion about it. Manager, assistant manager, clerk, whatnot, everybody knows it. I'm sure if she asked any of those professionals that can she use that? I can guarantee you they would say, no, she cannot. Because that is blatantly not allowed everywhere.
That takes us to uses position for preferential treatment.
I mean, I guess, first of all, this banner that we're talking about, do we look at this banner as city property?
Do we know where it was, who purchased it, who paid for the banner?
We don't. All I know is there was a banner, and then until tonight, I didn't know where it was even acquired from or anything. And all I know is tonight that Howie Harris gave Mayor Milan the banner, and she kept them for years. And she'd used the banners before.
I think without that information, I don't know that we can effectively make a judgment on that political activity using city resources.
I come up for the use of city property for personal gain. There's three things. There's use.
Sorry,
there's
yeah, I read the
use-
wrong one. Sorry. Use of city property for personal gain.
And then we also have
We can't
used,
determine that it's city property. I don't know that we can actually determine if that was used as personal gain.
Chairman, I do believe I shared an email with you back before the first meeting from
Gina when I asked where the banners came from, and she did some research, and they were purchased with city property, with city funds. They were originally stored at the DPW and they were lost. So they purchased another set, and then they said it had been kept by the council members, so they would keep them, so they wouldn't lose them. So that was an email that was sent out probably 2 months ago. When we first got the complaint in, and I did the research, so that was sent over to you.
Well, I withdraw my statement then.
And then we still, just again, I just want to make sure we're hitting each box. There's used the position, so used her, did she use her position as mayor to provide preferential treatment? I guess I struggle with that a little bit in the sense that there's nothing that says anybody else tried to use the banners. There's nothing that said that somebody else made a request to use the banners. There's nothing that says somebody was denied the ability to use the banners. So, I mean, she had the banners, she'd used the banners. So I guess for anybody who wanted to use them in the parade, they could have asked her about them. There's been no testimony that anybody asked the mayor about the banners or asked if they could use the banners, or that she said something like, I'm the mayor, I use them. You don't get to use them. There's no statements, nothing that I see in the evidence, unless I missed something or.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I didn't see anything that stated anything to that.
I'm sorry, you were moving on to another point too, I believe.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to use of city property for personal gain. So if we do know definitively that these were purchased with city funds, I think that is back on the table for discussion.
So then again, we need to look at what is personal gain? And what do we see as personal gain?
Well, I agree that we can't quantify what personal gain is. I think that because we're using it within the context of campaigning, then what should not be the primary understanding of personal gain is financial.
Mhm.
I think there's an unknown quantity of potential personal gain in this capacity, seeing that we're talking about a campaign activity. But I don't believe that there's any financial gain to be made here. But I don't believe that also equals no potential for personal gain.
And while I think the overall outcome is unknown, I don't think winning or losing the election necessarily limits or defines. I mean, I think even on the end, even on the side of losing, it would be no different than if I took a performance enhancing drug to run a race and still come in last.
I don't know that we have enough information in terms of a definition of personal gain outside of contracts and financial benefit to really answer this question, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'd be looking at it as, I mean, or arguably having or potentially seeking an advantage in election, some form of personal gain.
Is that in, I'm not.
That's
seeing
not
that.
anywhere.
Yeah, it's
I'm
not
just-
in here, it's not in the ordinance.
No,
Political activity would define that as yes.
So the city property that we are talking about are specifically the two banners.
the one, yes,
Okay, the one that says city council and mayor, and on the rear of the truck saying, welcome to Clausen. So that's specifically what we're talking about. Weren't those specifically used to announce the council and the mayor?
yes,
Those two items.
yes,
So
they were.
okay,
But the usage of the Paula Malone for mayor sign,
But-
not,
but we're not
And
talking
not-
about that.
we are absolutely talking about that. They
Yeah.
cannot be extracted from one another. They were in the same vehicle. They were announcing the same group of people. There is no way to not politicize the use of city property when a political sign is utilized.
But you're saying she gained personal gain using those two banners. I'm not putting words in your mouth.
That is what we're trying to deliberate
Okay.
is there gain through a potential understanding of endorsement by the city of Clausen through the usage of city property? Which is very hard to quantify. That's what we're trying to say.
Yeah,
That is, it's not a yes or
I
no
agree.
question, because it's also very hard to quantify what that gain is. But it's also, I think, inappropriate to say that there was no gain. Because we don't know that either.
Well, we don't know that.
We want to move on to the third potential violation, political
well, then-
activity using city resources or time.
yeah. We can go on and talk about that.
I mean, as I said, I can't understand this as anything other than political activity with the usage of campaign sign. And then now that we know that the banners are the property of the city of Clausen, I think that we have to understand those as city resources being used for political activity. There's no definition of intent here. I don't think anybody intended to do anything that they weren't supposed to do, but to Mr. Nishai's point, that doesn't preclude a violation of the ordinance.
No, Mr. Nushai, City Attorney Nushai. Again, just for clarification on that, is, to your understanding, is intent one of the elements in finding whether or not there was or was not a violation?
No, the ordinance doesn't have any such indication one way or another.
Okay.
Could somebody explain what city time means? What's the definition of city time?
It's for time, so we can exclude that issue.
Yeah, I would say that it wouldn't apply here just to make your inquiry easier because it seems to speak for someone in the city's administration.
So it would not apply.
I would leave that out.
I agree.
There's one additional piece in the original complaint that I didn't see addressed, Mr. Nushai, in your assessment, which is if we know who paid for the entry in the parade,
I'm sorry, one more time, please.
who paid for the entry in the parade,
I wouldn't,
or if you had to pay, I don't know.
I think there's a registration with the city, but I don't think.
I don't do the parade, so.
Yeah.
We don't register it here.
Okay, so maybe we can't include that. I just wanted to address that because it is in the complaint and I didn't see it. In your opinion. Here, do we need to deliberate further?
So again, just to be clear, there's no question that Mayor Milan is an elected member of the city. So for the political activity we're looking at, I'm just looking right now at the actual defined political activity provision. So we're looking at question 1, did she use city property? And question 2, was it for her own political benefit?
I think we can rule out the last sentence under that definition. I don't believe there any potential political activity interfered with the performance of the usual duties
No,
of
that's
the
correct.
city official.
And then coming back up, I'm just trying to distill it down a little more. So for preferential treatment. Would be, did she use her official position to grant any privileges, exemptions, advantages, contracts? That that wouldn't apply contracts or preferential treatment for herself. So did she use her position as the mayor or her official position as the mayor to grant to unreasonably secure, request or grant any privileges?
I don't see that under. Section 4, where are you getting that language from?
Under preferential treatment under the Code of Ethics. It's in Mr. Nushai's opinion. He cites the section of the code.
I thought we determined we couldn't quantify.
Yeah, I was just distilling down the points.
Okay.
And the second one is that that she shall not directly or indirectly use any city property and that there's personal gain. And again, in that first one, the preferential tree, under use position to provide for preferential treatment. What we don't know is if there was anybody else that was attempting to use the banners and that she used her position to prohibit or prevent anybody else from using that city property.
Mhm. I don't know that for me, that doesn't sway the opinion either way on whether there was personal gain.
I'm just saying
Preferential treatment.
preferential treatment. It also has the word unreasonably secure request or grant. So she was given the banners were passed on. August, you said that council, as long as there, you said that council kept the banners, so somebody from council would keep the banners?
Yes.
And
That's
pass them and just pass them along to somebody else the next time?
Yes.
And the mayor's testimony was that these banners were just handed to her.
I think within that, for me, what is most applicable is advantages.
Mhm.
Was there an advantage in utilizing the banners in the mayor's possession? Did that create preferential treatment when combined with the election sign, the campaign sign?
I see that tying more to the political activity. The first part, because we still have to be able to determine that she used her official position to unreasonably secure, request, or grant the advantages.
Okay.
So we can't. You can find that there was a,
But I think in this instance, very specifically,
Mhm.
the preferential treatment is the existing mayor.
Mhm.
Using signages that state mayor and also utilizing a campaign sign that says Paul Malone for mayor. I don't know that it's actually, for me, I'm not reading this as the act of securing the stuff, but was preferential treatment exacted by
Granted.
utilizing city property? Can I get another turn?
it'll just get more confusing.
We have a bunch of them up here, and I'm not one of them.
You're doing fine.
We still. Actively.
Yeah, deliberations. Does anybody else have anything to add on any of the points?
I'm still having a hard time connecting the dots because I don't see how using the signs, the banners itself was being used for her own political gain. I think that's a big leap to make. Did she have a sign that said Paula for mayor? Yes, but is that tied into what those banners were intended to be used for? And does that make a difference? I just don't see where she gained anything because of the banners on the truck. Again, I think those banners were used to announce to everyone who these people were and nothing more. So I don't know how you make that connection.
What about the sign for the election? What does that mean? If that banner announces who they are? Election is there. Just a little bit or a lot. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't see how it could be anything other than political activity when you're using a campaign sign. As a conscious choice for the mayor to want to know who she was. And otherwise it would have just been the city of Clausen. And it would have been fine to just be the city of Clausen and the mayor. But adding the campaign sign to say Paula Milan for mayor makes it a campaign activity. I don't know how to explain it any more clearly than that.
I think it's a little bit different if the sign said Milan, the mayor,
Correct. That would be completely different.
It's that one word or.
but there's a
A
distinction.
little bit.
Yeah, there's a distinction.
Folks can laugh, but as somebody who has gone through an election process in the state of Michigan and signed all of those forms, understanding what the rights and requirements are for candidates in the state of Michigan, I think it's unacceptable to say that there's no understanding that this is that, including that sign made this a campaign activity. And I was a parade goer and I had the same feeling during the parade that was that there was confusion that could be caused by that. Was that vehicle representing the city of Clausen or was it representing Paula Milan for mayor? Ready to make a motion?
Yes, I believe so, unless somebody else has anything else they'd like to add or.
If I may,
No, of course, that's the whole purpose.
and
of
if
it.
I'm out of line, just rein me back in, okay? But somebody asked if we could address some of the comments that were made by
Yeah,
in public comment, and it, when I first looked at the Board of Ethics complaint forms, the petitioners were asked to fill out every section. And I noticed under the witness information, and this is kind of important, and I won't read the whole thing, but it says, provide details to support the allegations stated in the complaint. And the only thing they said was any parade goer, which to me was kind of a broad statement. How do you say everybody that was at the parade has reached the same conclusion as the petitioners?
I believe what it says is, so the first part is providing the names and addresses Yep,
Telephone numbers.
Telephone numbers, which
which you believe may have
may have
information.
information. What do we?
So are they the only ones that feel this way? And the reason I bring it up,
Mhm.
if you go over to the petitioner statement, it said, and I think it was line 14, moreover, and importantly, use of the city of Clausen banners coupled with a campaign sign given Mayor Milan an unfair advantage over the other candidates for mayor in the upcoming November election. And Mrs. Hodges stated in the public comment, as she did here, it appears to onlookers that the city of Clausen itself was supporting Mayor Milan's reelection. This is clearly against public policy and democratic norms. Well, wouldn't that have been the time to fill out the witness information? Because if there were a lot of people at that parade, they claim everybody felt the same way they did. Why didn't they have a few people say the same things that they're complaining about?
I think respectfully, what they're trying to say is this was witnessed publicly by the entire community.
But they didn't list one person that supported what they were
Sure,
trying to say.
sure.
To me,
It's not
they
about-
made a.
It's not about support. It says that could provide information that would assist the commission in the evaluation of this complaint. So I think what the intent was, if I can speak for my perception of what this was it wasn't like a personnel matter between one or two people within the city of Clausen. This was something that was public. And anyone who witnessed the parade was a witness to what they're identifying as a potential violation of the ethics ordinance.
I mean,
But this is their opinion, correct? It's not fact. They stated as fact, but I don't.
This is just about witnesses, not for or against a
Right.
potential violation, but anybody who might have witnessed this actual event that could provide information to this body for our evaluation.
Okay.
So not about people who agree with their perception of the event, but any witness. And so what they're trying to say is anyone who witnessed the parade on July 4th would be able to say that they saw what they saw.
But I think it's a lead to think that anybody or some people may have said, wow, look what Paul Milan did.
This shows no intent to support or dissent from what the petitioners are saying here. Any witness to the event.
I mean, to your point, this whole thing would have been a lot easier if we had a bunch of witness statements.
Yeah.
I mean, then we could have looked at them and said, we've got 10 people that say they're now, if there were 10 people that we had statements that said, I'm now gonna vote for her because of this, or 10 people that said this, that would have made it a lot easier. We probably could have dispelled those things in a much faster manner, but the additional witnesses in general, it's there to assist us in making our job easier or harder. And by them putting any parade goer, it didn't make it any easier. It's not making it any easier for us.
Because the intent of this, when we did the initial complaint
Yeah.
form, was if there was a incident that happened between two people, were there any people to witness it that could corroborate the petitioner's statements? That doesn't necessarily, I don't believe that applies in this context because it was such a public event. I think there certainly could have been more information, but I believe this is a little bit different than previous uses of that specific request.
make a motion and put this to vote?
Okay, every time we do this,
Then we
get
don't know if
ourselves
to do
turned
the
around.
positive, or should we do
Yeah.
as a positive or negative?
We do this as written, August, or just as a review? So how do we make a motion to?
You make a motion either is guilty or isn't guilty. You have a choice. No.
Not guilty.
I'm sorry, in violation, in violation.
May I suggest, since the, in the complaint, it was, you know, based on the forms that the board drew up early on, you had the complainant check the boxes based on what they thought was a violation, which is what you've utilized over the course of the evening to analyze. So in order to make a motion, make it in a positive statement, you know, I make a motion that that, you know, the respondent did violate the code of ethics, and then you take them one by one. First one, I would say first motion would be by using the position to provide preferential treatment. You vote on that and then you take it down or in whatever order.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to find the respondent in violation of the code of ethics for the use of position to provide preferential treatment.
It requires a second.
I'll second.
Discussion.
I just need to know. So am I saying, how would I answer that? I'm so sorry. Can you just make the motion? Can you just repeat it?
Violation.
So okay, so,
So yes, in violation, no.
no, okay.
Or we can have any discussion, if you want further discussion on this one point. If there's no discussion, then I'll go ahead and we can call the vote then.
Commissioner Nishai? No. Commissioner Quinn?
I find her not in violation.
Yes or no?
It's no. That
No,
would be
No.
No.
Commissioner Traxel?
No,
Commissioner Fenton?
No,
Commissioner McGinnis?
No.
Motion fails.
okay. Thank you. I'll make a motion to find the respondent in violation of code of ethics under use of city property for personal gain.
Support.
Okay, any discussion? No discussion, then we can go ahead and call the vote.
Commissioner Quinn?
no,
Commissioner Traxel?
yes,
Commissioner Fenton?
Yes,
Commissioner McGinnis?
Yes.
Commissioner Nishai?
Yes.
That one passes.
Motion to find the respondent in violation of code of ethics in light of the political activity using city resources. or time.
second,
Any discussion? No discussion, then we'll go ahead and call the vote.
Commissioner Traxel?
yes,
Commissioner Fenton?
yes,
Commissioner McGinnis?
Yes.
Commissioner Nishai?
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn?
no.
Motion passes.
At this point, we will move on to the city attorney report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. At the last meeting, when the board addressed the previous issue, there was a question raised about contracts, and I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about contracts in the city and how they're handled, and also answer any questions you may have. And I can also obviously provide additional information down the road as well if anything that I say may elucidate. We have contracts are handled in a couple of different ways as far as our main documents are concerned. First, we have chapter 14 of our charter currently deals with contracts, and we have certain information there. First, with respect to contracts, they exceed $1,000, how they're handled. We also have the next section deals with contracts awarded to the lowest bidder, and it sets up a system where there's a bid for any contract above $1,000. And then it deals with, then there's a couple of other provisions. The last one mandating the contracts be settled by way of an ordinance in the city. And then we do have a specific ordinance that deals with contracts as well, which is, well, contracts come up in a lot of different locations, obviously, throughout. But we do have a specific a portion of our ordinance that deals with them. Again, it deals with awarding them to the lowest bidder. We have again dealing with purchases over $1,000. I know on previous occasion this body has dealt with has had motions at a previous iteration of council, which announced how a step process by which they will award these contracts. So there's a lot of information, and that's what informs basically the activity of the city's administration as far as dealing with any and all vendors that we have, from the smallest item to the largest items. So of course now I do not recall the specifics of your questions, but with respect to contracts, but I think it was more, do we deal with them? And I think in the general sense, of course we do.
The question, thank you for that.
Of course.
City Attorney, the question came about at the last meeting when there was a complaint filed, potential ethics violation due to a contract for a vending machine in the DPW. And my request was, did they go out for open bid? And what is the policy for having RFPs so that other folks have the ability to apply for contracts when appropriate?
I looked to the extent that we addressed a portion of that. I looked into whether there was a bid. I don't, this was a contract that had been in place for quite some time. It was rather old. I don't believe I received any information to state whether there was a bid or not. So I don't have the answer to that specific question. But obviously any contracts, they're constantly renewed and constantly, they go out for bids. Certain monetary amounts, as you may have heard, and depending on how you calculate the monetary amount, may not, because the city manager has some discretionary authority with respect to certain dollar amounts, and the dollar amount being $1,000.
Right. That's fair. That's a longstanding relationship. I think what we had said was in an effort to not be in that situation again as a board, it would make much more sense for the city to have a policy in place where there's both a conflict of interest form filed at the potential opportunity for a relationship to be formed, and to make sure that wherever possible, those opportunities are going out for bid.
Yeah, I think that makes absolute sense, and the city does. I have nothing further, Chair.
Can we move on to my comments? I think I've made a lot of, probably more comments than I've needed to, or than people would probably care to hear tonight. I just thank everybody for coming out. Thank everybody for participating. Again, this is something that we do take very seriously. We try really hard. I'd like to welcome Mr. Quinn to the board. We're really glad to have you. Thank you. Glad to have you as a member of the board, and I look forward to continued discussions and kind of as we delve through this. Actually, I look forward to hopefully not having any more of these, but in the event that we do, I look forward to continued discussions.
And I look forward to being of service.
And otherwise, I'd like to thank everybody else, and that is all I have to say. So I will make a motion to adjourn
Anyone
tonight.
else have anything to say?
Does anybody else have anything? It says commissioners' comments.
Yeah. Anyone
We're all
else?
commissioners.
No.
Right. Really trying to stop you guys from talking.
Absolute power corrupts, absolutely. No, I just want to say, I just want to second Chair McGinnis's comments at the beginning of the meeting that I think that all of us are here because we believe that there's an opportunity to support the city being the best city we could possibly be. And I'll speak for myself, but also for my fellow commissioners, that I don't think any of us come here with any type of political agenda and no opportunity except the willingness and interest to make sure that this is the best city that we can possibly be. And I hope that that is the perception of everybody here. And I just want to say, thank you for the opportunity to serve.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Commissioner Fenton,
Yes.
Chairman McGinnis.
yes.
Commissioner Nishai,
Yes.
Commissioner Quinn,
Yes.
Commissioner Traxel.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
That's all. That's all. I will do that on purpose. That's all.
Take care. Thank you.